Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June 3rd joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority. May we have a roll call for the council?
Councilmember Asadrian.
Here.
Brotman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
And for the Housing Authority?
Authority Member Ajinian.
Here.
Brotman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
And Chair Asadrian.
Here.
May we have your report?
The agenda for the Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 joint public meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority was posted on May 30th, 2025 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
And the first item.
First item would be community development regarding report on potential rental assistance program. 1, City Council motion to receive and file report and provide direction as deemed appropriate.
Mr. Golanian.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Najarian, members of City Council, Chairperson Satrian, members of the Housing Authority. Peter Zovak, in a minute, Peter Zovak is our Assistant Director of Community Development, will provide an overview of financial and rental assistance programs available to our residents, including current and past programs, as well as some potential future models that staff has been working on. And we will request direction from council to be able to design and align programs that will meet your expectations as far as financial funding, as well as council's priorities. And he will go over some key elements just to guide the conversation. With that, Mr. Zovak.
Thank you, City Manager Galanian, Mayor Najarian, Chair Satrian, members of the Council and Housing Authority. Good afternoon. As stated, this report comes at the request of the City Council. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of current, past, and proposed rental assistance efforts in support of possibly developing a new rental assistance program for lower-income Glendale residents. In order to design a program that meets Council's objectives, staff is seeking direction on 4 program categories. The first would be the program's goal. Is the intent of this program or programs to assist with eviction prevention? Is it to assist with relocation? Or is it simply to assist with those households that are rent burdened relative to their incomes? What would the target population be? Would it be seniors, families, disabled individuals, disabled households, or a combination? What would the budget scope and number of households to serve be? Would be level of funding? And the preferred assistance structure, would it be a fixed assistance or would it be need-based assistance? So fixed assistance, would it be $300 flat amount across all households, or would it fluctuate depending upon each household's individual situation? So that's some of the direction that we're looking for. We are not expecting council to approve a program today. We're simply looking for direction. And what we would do is that once that direction is set, staff will return at a later meeting with cost projections, eligibility models, potential administrative frameworks of how the program would work. We'd also have a better idea of administrative capacity to be able to put out those programs, and then any available partners that we might be able to hook up with to deliver these services effectively. So our first slide here is taking a quick look at Glendale's rental landscape. We have, in terms of population, we have 196,500 residents. This is according to the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey data. We have 72,000 housing units, of which 46,000 housing units are estimated to be renter occupied. We have a median gross rent in Glendale at $2,095. We have a median income, renter household income, specifically $60,773. In looking at the renter households that are there, the survey, community surveys states that approximately 64% of renter households are rent burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their monthly income towards rent. Within those 46,000 renter occupied units, approximately 23% of them are made up of seniors age 65 or older. 52% are made up of households with ages between 35 and 64. And then young adults considered 35 and younger make up 25% of those renter households. In terms of local housing initiatives that have been implemented already by the City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority, we have and specifically with regards to renter programs, so we have the Section 8 program. That's an annual program, and annually it assists over up to 2,600 households on an annual basis. We are, right now, the City Council had established the monthly housing subsidy program just before COVID had hit. And then the program was administered during COVID and just completed its last payments this month. We also have the low-income student rental assistance program that was set up by council, and that is a partnership with Glendale Community College. It provides rental aid and wraparound support services to very low-income students, Glendale students at GCC. We also have the Life Wrap program, known as the Low-Income Family Emergency and Rental Assistance Program. That was set up in conjunction with the Verdugo Job Center. That is to assist low-income working families. And in addition to providing them rental assistance, they are going through mandatory job training programs and life coaching programs at the BJC. That is also in its final months of service. They're finishing out the final 10 families right now. There's no additional programming for it to keep going after that. During COVID, the City Council also administered the Emergency Rental Assistance Program using federal funding. And then, of course, ongoing basis, we have affordable housing development. We've had quite a bit of activity in affordable housing development within the last 5 years. At one point, we had the largest affordable housing project in California at Pioneer. We're double checking right now to see whether or not that's still the case, but we did at that time. And quite a bit of investment has been made in those projects, and those serve households annually for as long as 55 or even longer years. This table right here gives you a brief overview of everything that we just went over. I just want to call attention to a couple of categories here. The average subsidy in the Section 8 program is approximately $1,500 a month. The MHSP program was provided across everyone as a fixed subsidy of $300 per month. The low-income student rental assistance program was an average, about $600. The Life Wrap program, average of about $1,000 per month. The ERAP program was $1,500 a month, and affordable housing programs do vary, projects. In terms of annual funding for those respective programs, $40 million annually from the federal government for Section 8. When the Housing Authority and City Council implemented the MHSP program, and that was for very low-income, extremely low-income seniors with a preference for disabled, that was funded at $14.9 million using Measure S money at that time. The Low-Income Student Rental Assistance Program was funded with $1.3 million of Measure S money. The Life Wrap program was $1.32 million of Measure S money. The ERAP program for COVID was $750,000 in assistance provided by the federal government. And then approximately $69.5 million was committed of local funding. Not all Measure S, we do have affordable housing funding, but $69.5 million committed to our affordable housing projects. So when you look at those projects combined, programs combined, $49.7 million came from the federal government, $86.97 million was provided by the city. So it's a very large amount. And it's worth restating whenever we can that that was a very large commitment that the council provided to a broad range of categories in terms of households in Glendale, and all with different, objectives of what to achieve.
Cheers.
How long did the monthly housing subsidy program run for?
It was to go on for 2 years, initially designed for a 2-year program, and then it was extended, and then an additional group of people were selected, and they were provided, because of the remaining funding, were provided 1 year of eligibility for that program. So overall, it went for 3 years. Some people were given 2 years eligibility, and the final group of people were given 1 year of eligibility.
This page. The $86 million investment was in how many years?
It was over the course of just before COVID, so I would say 5 years, when we started buying up properties and committing them for affordable housing projects.
Pioneer and the Broadway was part of this.
Correct. Piedmont as well.
Which one?
Piedmont.
Oh, Piedmont, yes, okay, thank you.
One quick question. Peter, the low-income pilot program for the students, is that still ongoing?
No, they're at the last pot of money to assist the last group of students. So we expect it to be completed probably in the last 6 months. And there's no plans or no funding to renew it. It's in the same situation as the Life Wrap program. They've exhausted their money.
If you can go back for 1 second.
No.
What's the threshold for each of these programs? Income thresholds?
The income thresholds?
Yeah, so when you say extremely low
Oh,
versus very low,
we have a table for you in your staff report. I believe it appears on page 4. So a single-person household to qualify as extremely low would be $31,850. A very low would be $53,000. Low income would be $84,850.
thank you.
Okay. So that was a brief overview of the programs that you've funded in the past and where we're at with those. So if there is a desire to move and create a new program moving forward, then again, we go back to some of those program objectives. What would be the income and demographic targeting that you would like to see? Would it be seniors? Would it be working age households? Or would it be young adults? Or would it be a combination? Are there any concerns or desires to provide priority to people with disabilities? Within the staff report, we provided some information on households with disabilities, and as you know, senior households incur more disabilities, higher degree of disabilities than other households do. That's not to say that other households may need assistance, but seniors are on fixed incomes, and then they do have those issues that pop up with regards to disabilities. So is there a need to service that population? Would there be a desire to have it as a long-term support program or some type of emergency support program? Are we looking at assisting people with rent burden for a period of time that they might be threatened with eviction, possible homelessness? Or are we looking at something more long-term like the Life Wrap program was? That was a year program where assistance was provided to help offset their rent while they were then using that time that they otherwise would have been working for that money to go and take in programs at the VJC and counseling at the VJC and participate in that. And we did have a report back from the VJC about a year ago that they reported to council about the success of the program that they had. They had a number of households at the end of the program term come up with very large amounts of savings that they were able to achieve in their bank accounts due to this program. Others that graduated from one job to a higher paying job. So that would be the direction we'd like to see. Is that something that you would like to pursue with these types of programs, or are we strictly looking at providing direct rental assistance with no other programming provided to those households? I do want to make mention with regards to one new source of funding that is coming to the city of Glendale, and I think it's important to mention this particular funding over others is because that it really falls into this discussion that you're going to be having today. So La Casa is the new agency that will be in charge of providing affordable housing within LA County, and they're doing that through the half-cent sales tax measure that they had approved back in November. And that half-cent sales tax measure has a complicated formula, but every city will be receiving a pot of money in which they will be required to administer affordable housing projects and programs with that funding. Glendale, being the 4th largest city in LA County, will receive a direct allocation of funding. And the pots of money that are being provided include new affordable housing development of projects. And then this pot of money that is more applicable to today's conversation, about $2.4 million in funding that must be used for renter programs not projects, but programs. So programs that will benefit renters, be it legal aid assistance, programs to assist people that are in arrears in their rent, at threat of being eviction, things like that. So it falls in line with this discussion and warrants bringing up to you. One thing is that we don't know when that $2.4 million will be awarded to us. Right now, La Casa is going through the process of setting up their memorandums of understandings that we would be required to execute with them. They're also developing further details on these programs that they are establishing, and they'll be asking us to provide them some feedback on it as well. So it will be a while before we'd be able to establish a program, but it is money that will be anticipated to be coming in.
So it's still in the preliminary stage?
Virginia?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Brotman?
I just would like you to clarify that this is only for short-term programs, temporary
And yes, I'm
programs.
sorry about
It's
that,
not-
yes,
We couldn't use it for a long-term rental assistance like our, whatever it's called, that I
Yes.
can never remember,
MHSP.
MHSP.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. One of the requirements that they do have is that it is considered a shallow subsidy program, so a program that is offering assistance no more than 6 months. And that money cannot be used for homeless services. There is a separate pot of money that is being given to the city for homeless programming and services, so it really has to be within this defined, narrow field of providing renter assistance for short-term.
But it can be used for homeless prevention, in the sense of somebody is on the verge of being evicted, we could use those
Correct.
funds to help get them current on their rent, something like that.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay.
Mr. Argini?
Yes, I'm sorry for jumping ahead. That pilot program by La Casa, am I correct? La Casa, is still in its preliminary stage, or is it?
It's preliminary. They started collecting the sales tax on April 1st, and we're waiting to hear how often and when the county will be able to make their first payment on the sales tax to the different agencies, and how often that will occur.
Whose design is it set, by us or by them?
I'm sorry?
Whose design is it set? Is it by us or by them?
They are setting the design, but they are asking us, while they're setting the design, to provide input and feedback. Whether they take that input and implement it, we don't know yet. But they are actively working with all of the agencies to get some type of feedback on how they are moving forward.
Well, it's a good idea. I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
Councilmember Garpetian?
Yes, thank you. I have a few quick questions. You mentioned that there's 2,673 vouchers in our program?
I believe it's 2,600? 673, yes.
And do we have the transfers, they come from out of city, you know, they can get a voucher in LA and then transfer here. Is that part of this?
That's part of it, yes.
It's part of it.
Yes, part of 2,673. So actually, it includes the vouchers that we have issued to us normally,
On the transfers.
and the transfers, and some of the special category vouchers that we've been issued over time. So the EHV program, the VASH, Veterans Assistance vouchers that we have, and some mainstream vouchers that we have. So it's all of them.
And the median gross rent in Glendale is $2,095. How do we stand against Pasadena and Burbank?
We took a look at that, and we're fairly consistent with them.
Very consistent?
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty much in the same lines as we are?
Yes, we're not an outlier to them, that's for sure.
Okay. And how many low-income housing units do we have, like the ones on, like affordable housing projects that we built? They're not part of this voucher program. I just want to know how many affordable units do we have between vouchers and the physical units by themselves, like the ones on Jackson, Isabel, those large properties that we have.
So we have 500 some units that are in construction right now. We have approximately 1,400 units that are already completed. So 1,900 units plus 2,600 vouchers, Section 8 vouchers. That's at 4,500 units annually.
Probably pretty much 4,500 units. Okay.
Right.
That's just city, though. There's private entities that also provide.
Those are just city-sponsored projects and programs right there.
I'm not sure if, do you have that number, by the way? Like the Southern California Presbyterian Homes and?
For projects that we have not participated with them in, no, I do not have that.
And going back to that 86 million, is this the funds that we invested into projects, like we purchased the land for Pioneer and the Broadway project?
Correct.
And which other projects did we purchase since 2018 or 19 before COVID?
So-
It's Pioneer, it's Broadway, it's Piedmont.
Correct. But in addition to buying the land, we also filled some feasibility gap as well.
Right.
So that's not to say that $89 million was land value alone.
No, I understand. I just want to figure out, you can give me the figures later if you don't have it today. I want to figure out how much is the land and how much more. And sometimes they come back and say we can't get that 9% tax credit because we are short $2 million and we inject those funds into the project to make it feasible.
I can provide that in the follow-up.
Okay. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Chair Saturian.
The 2.4 million, which is also expected to fluctuate over time. Any of these programs that, if we look to create, could we tailor it that it is only for current Glendale residents?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
if we're using Measure S funds or our general funds, we can limit that. And then what about the one that we're going to be getting from the county?
We haven't seen anything to the contrary, so that money would be serving Glendale residents. There's not a requirement that we've seen so far that says that it must be offered to those outside of Glendale as well.
Okay,
Because each agency is getting their own allocation, it's safe to assume that it would serve that population in that city.
okay, and then second, I think it may be more for Mr. Garcia. I know that when we're looking at people with disabilities, I had also asked staff a little bit ago to provide like total number of people with disabilities in the city of Glendale, not just those that are over 65. And it's 5.9% of our population. If we're looking at things like limited independence as a criteria, is there a way for us to be able to break that down when we're creating programming?
Housing
Like
authority,
severity of the disability?
well, if we're directed by the council and housing authority to look at that, we could try to come up with a policy that addresses that. However, I would note that I think it'll be, there'll be some administrative challenges, I think, with sort of implementing that and enforcing that, depending, because there's no definition in federal or state law. So by creating an additional category, we'd have to see whether we have, what additional resources would be necessary to sort of monitor that and implement it. But, depending on where the council wants to go with it, it's something we can look at.
And then staffing-wise, I know the report included number of staffing that would be needed. If we give you certain direction, the next report is the one that will have an actual breakdown of how much would go to staffing and,
What the needs would be? Yes. Yes.
okay.
Yes. The beauty of the LifeWrap program was that the staffing came from Glendale Community College.
Right.
LifeWrap came from the VJC. MHSP, though, we had to hire and received permission to hire 5 hourly workers to implement MHSP. And so as we were ramping up, we went to the full 5 employees that we needed to take the program off, qualify everybody. Once we got everyone qualified and the program started running, it was just regular maintenance, and then we were able to then reduce that hourly staffing down, and it's completely been exhausted.
And out of the $14.9 million, do you have a number of how much went to staffing?
I think I do have it here. I don't see it. I believe it was a nominal number. I believe it was probably $700,000 over the life of the program. 700,000, yes.
Thank you.
And I would have to double check whether or not we expended all of that or not. That was just the budgeted amount.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
So there is one more slide item I didn't cover yet. Under other considerations, we did talk about staffing. So the more problematic or the more work involved in running a program would result in more staffing needed to administer it. So but we had stated that as we look at this direction you give us, we'll see whether or not there's any opportunities to partner with any other department or agency where there might be staffing that's available to administer it. But the other thing would be is that one policy that the council has taken in previous years, not necessarily this policy, but it's been continued, has been the whole issue of should we focus affordable housing projects where we stack them and programs, stack them on top of each other, meaning one family member might be living in an affordable housing unit. They are also on the Section 8 program. They're also eligible for MHSP and things like that. So in the past, there's been a desire not to double dip when providing assistance in projects and programs. So the most recent example was when the MHSP program was established. The council at that time gave the directive that they didn't want someone on Section 8 to be eligible for the MHSP program. Someone living in an affordable housing project was not eligible to participate in the MHSP program. And so we were given that direction. And the idea is to be able to spread all your resources and provide as much assistance as you can to as many families. So that would be the question with any eventual program we set up moving forward as well. Would that be something we'd want to look at?
Member Kasakian.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a lot for us to tackle here, especially seeing how a majority of our residents are rent burdened. And it really, anything that we do appears that we may be trying to bail water off the Titanic for some of these individuals. So the question becomes, do we focus on few programs that provide quality help or subpar amount of assistance to more people? And, as to which approach we as a council decide will have a lot of impacts. I want to ask a few questions to help me decide which direction I want our resources to be directed. First one is just basic, and I don't think it was in the report, but it is interesting to me to have this information if we have it. Do we know how many households are still being impacted by unpaid rent from COVID?
No, we do not.
We do not.
No.
Is there a way to figure that out, or does the county have any resources to help us figure it out? Obviously, some landlords have already initiated eviction notices towards people. The reason I ask this is because for people who found themselves in a very difficult situation, both landlords and tenants, but especially tenants who were unable to find work and now find themselves behind to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars, which also impacts the landlords certainly, but perhaps there's ways to help those individuals get caught up so they can have less stress in their lives for being under such debt to having the court cases against them. That may be something of interest to me. Also, I would like to know what are the city's housing vacancy rates as they stand right now? How many vacant units are there in the city? Who is perhaps sitting on units vacant that can be used for housing? And one issue for me that's critical is perhaps building on what you were saying about layering these programs. What's of more interest to me is preventing people from becoming homeless due to circumstances that may be out of their control. We have a number of households, anecdotally, I don't know the specific number, but perhaps there's someone who can help us find out how many individuals there are who live in a subsidized household. Some sort of assistance is being provided to them, but they are not a direct beneficiary of the program. So I know of a number of cases, at least 3 that I know personally, of individuals who are home care givers to elderly parents. They were not part of the Section 8 voucher that they were receiving, or perhaps on it. Once the elderly parent passes, this individual has no place to really go, and at least one person ended up on the streets that I think we all probably have had interactions with and tried to provide that individual with assistance. How do we, and perhaps this includes talking to our federal representatives, but also coming up with creative ways to address this issue, to allow for a program to be transferred to an individual who's living in a home who, by the letter or intent, original intent of the law, would not be the direct beneficiary. It could be an elderly couple. It could be people who are not legally married but have been living together for a number of years, etc. One person could be on the Section 8 waiting list, or could be on the list for a housing program, but the other individual isn't. And then once that one person gets into the program, the other person is left on the street. Those are the types of issues I'd like to find solutions to.
We could certainly try to run a report on the Section 8 program units, how many households have a live-in aid, and meet that criteria, and then try and delve deeper into it and see what some of the statistics might
This,
be.
by the way, also applies to households with dependents. There are children, I know of one household right now where the child has disabilities and, is very dependent on the parents. Now, once the parents are no longer in the picture, what happens to that one individual? How do they, what is the safety net that captures that person so they don't end up on our streets?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Peter, where were you?
So we go back to this final slide here. What is the council's primary objective? Is the goal to prevent eviction, support relocation, supplement rent for cost-burdened tenants? Who should we prioritize? Seniors, students, working families? Should we prioritize anybody and have it just be first come, first serve that meet some of the program, that meet the program design criteria? What level would we be, and amount of money would we be allocating to these types of programs? And how many households would you like to serve with these programs? If right now the direction is to look at developing some type of program with the anticipated $2.4 million of La Casa money, we can do that. As we had said earlier, it's a 6-month program. We can try and come back and see with what that might be able to do in terms of assistance, given some of the objectives you want to achieve. Or if it's other type of funding you'd want us to go out and research and come back with, we can do it that way as well.
I think funding is the key, Peter, at least in my mind. Once we know what funding is available, then we can tweak the priorities as to who should we prioritize, how many should we prioritize. What is there besides, and is Section 8 guaranteed?
No, it's not.
Right, I mean, that's a whole other issue that may be facing some cuts,
Correct.
which would be,
Right.
I think, incredibly difficult for this community. But I'd like to know what's available. Of course, there's the La Casa money, the 2.4, very small in comparison to our needs. But if anything else is out there, I'd like to be aware of such as we formulate our, our policy.
Okay.
I think we were very generous back in 2020 when we allocated and created that MHSP program. It wasn't a lot of money, but we tried to make it relevant to the seniors and the disabled at that time. Looking back, wow, 15 million could solve a couple of our budget problems right now going forward. But at the time, that's what we felt was necessary to do, and we did. So funding, I'm very concerned about funding opportunities. If there's anything out there that's available, especially recurring funding that isn't just one time, because it's tough to build a program on one-time funding. Council members? Yes, Chair.
Sure.
Chair Satori.
So I had brought this item up, recognizing that the other programs that we had were kind of winding down. My goal in this was not just to see what rent subsidy programs we can have, but also looking at other programs within the city that we can help bundle to make a, I don't know, bigger impact, if you will. I know that one of the other items that's coming in front of us is the public benefits program from Glendale Water and Power. And so I'd like to see something where, I mentioned this, I believe during our last meeting, as we're going through the budget session, the, nice to have items, I recognize that we are in the hole in our budget, but as we're looking to develop these programs, looking at the nice to have items and identify those as we're talking about this, and to determine whether or not it would be good to move forward with a certain capital improvement project versus creating some sort of rental subsidy program. The funding source is important, but I also recognize we're living in a time where we really don't know what's going to happen and what's going to come down from the federal government and even the state at this point. And so for me, at least, looking at some sort of program that covers the next year and the year after, because we are winding down a couple of those programs. If you are looking for specific feedback, I would definitely say I'm interested in our current residents only, so no one from outside of the city of Glendale would be able to qualify. You don't get to double dip into different programs. When it comes to people with disabilities, looking at if there is a way for us to gauge the disability level, and if there's limited independence, for that to kind of be part of the report. I'm not looking for it to be just individuals that are over 65 years old. And I don't know if this is something that you can kind of work out with Glendale Water and Power. I think you had mentioned this during the staff briefing, as well as in a previous report, but the feedback we received from the residents that were getting the $300 subsidy last time noted that it was okay, but that $500, $600 mark is that mark, and I can see why that would be the case. It doesn't have to be that all of that comes from a rent subsidy program, but how we get to that $500, $600 number bundled with other programs that allow for them to lower their overall cost, whether it's utilities or any other assistance with food and so forth, right? So I am still interested in having a program with Glendale Community College. If there's an opportunity for us to have that partnership also be something where they're pitching in not just the staffing, but something else for us to look and negotiate that as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to all be about the funding source and where we're getting the money. And if we're not able to identify the nice to have that are currently in our budget, I can easily see this going, well, we don't have the money for it, so therefore. I think Councilmember Kasakian also raised some really important questions about people that are dependents, living with family members currently that are getting some sort of assistance. And I would say that given that these programs are kind of wrapping up, looking to bring this back sooner than later, so we don't have too wide of a gap.
Okay.
Other comments? Mr. Kasakian?
I'll just be very brief, yes.
I apologize, I think you have a speaker on this item.
We have a speaker.
Yes, Mayor, we do.
How many do we have?
Just one.
Would you mind if we took?
I
the
do not
speaker?
mind at all.
Let's take the speaker.
Beth Brooks?
I think obviously this all says Glendale needs rent control. I think that's pretty obvious, especially with a median rent of $2,000 in Glendale, and rents can be raised up to 8.8%. That's $180 a month extra for people, which is really an incredible burden for seniors who get, from Social Security, I don't know, a couple of percentage increases. I would say for any programs, if you give money for people who have back rent, you're basically incentivizing people not to pay their rent. I'll tell you the truth. I'm a renter, and I'm all for renters' rights, but that incentivizes people not to pay their rent because that's what happened during COVID. They knew the government would pay their rent, and landlords got screwed totally because tenants just basically said, I'm not going to pay my rent. I'm going to apply later on, and the government will pay it. This is a terrible idea. If you want to give people a loan to pay their back rent, I think that's great. A no interest or low interest loan, but to pay their back rent, you're not helping their financial stability anyway. And you've basically just bailed them out in a way that they really honestly shouldn't be bailed out. You could try to make a deal with the landlord that they pay a little bit at a time, but that's a huge, huge problem. And that was a huge problem during COVID, and every landlord said the same exact thing. And all my friends were telling me not to pay my rent. And I know a lot of apparently nefarious people who have done nefarious things, who also didn't pay their rent. And if you go to court and you don't have money and you're evicted, you will live in that apartment for months at a time. And the landlord will get nothing from you. If you have nothing, you can't squeeze water out of a stone. You can't have a landlord say, well, guess what? Please give me the $10,000 you owe me. That renter will live in that apartment for 6 months and not pay rent. And the landlord will just want to get rid of that guy so he can finally free up that apartment and get somebody who can pay the rent. This is anecdotal, but I think we all know that this is true. I think you cannot double dip with people getting assistance and then getting more assistance. I think that's crazy. I also think the student program is absolutely crazy because you've got able-bodied, healthy people. I grew up with parents. I had roommates. I had my first lousy job. I didn't expect the government to subsidize my savings account. Basically, you said that they used it for savings. They saved money. So their parents should be paying for them, not the government. You help people who can't help themselves. You don't help people who can help themselves. And you can also change the renters' rights ordinance in the city to include every apartment building, because some of the suggestions that I read about in the report were basically asking the government to take on what the landlords can actually take on. You shouldn't be paying people to relocate. It should be the landlord. I have a lot of other ideas, but there you go. Thank you.
Ms. Brooks, feel free to send us those other ideas.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So a lot of the issues that were raised, I don't know if we have, as has been pointed out, we don't have infinite resources. I don't know how many individuals we can help, and then it becomes a very difficult decision as to who do you help, who do you not help. And when the initial that universal rental assistance program that was introduced, there was a question as to what the cutoff age was. And initially, we thought the cutoff age was an appropriate one, and then afterwards, I believe it was changed, was it not, to include more individuals. So that becomes a very difficult choice for council to engage in. My priorities would be the following. I believe that the number one thing we ought to focus on is helping individuals remain in homes, not be homeless, but first and foremost, try and get themselves into a home. So if there was any interest in providing assistance to individuals perhaps who may not be able to afford the first month, last month, plus security deposit, which given the average rental prices now, could be upwards of $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000, depending on the size of the family and the unit. It might be something that I would be interested in with certain restrictions on the number of people we could assist and those individuals meeting specific criteria. I'm also continue to be interested in helping seniors, particularly because seniors are a demographic whose income and earning ability is capped. They are not individuals who can earn more. Their retirement or their Social Security checks sometimes have cost of living adjustments, but rarely does it meet with, for instance, the almost 30% inflation that has impacted everything from the groceries that people buy to the other basic life necessities. And one thing that we've talked about that may not fit into this bucket, but I'd like us to revisit is helping people with home ownership assistance. There was a time in the city when we provided help to first-time home buyers to help them get their feet into their first home. Nowadays, given the average home prices, I think that's probably a condo versus a single-family home somewhere in the city, but still maybe, I don't know. But to find ways to provide that assistance, I'd be interested in. Obviously, it would be a loan, not a grant to the individuals. I think that helps us create ownership and help individuals get their foot in the door who may otherwise not be able to, and build wealth and equity in the future. Those would be my priorities, if we have the funds to do anything.
Thank you. Mr. Garvetchian?
Yes, one question. Did La Casa replace LASA? Is that what it is?
No.
What happened to LASA?
Well, the county has separated from LASA.
Right.
And their intent is to administer their own homeless services programming.
Got it. Okay.
So LASA and La Casa are separate entities.
Separate entities. Okay. Good, because they didn't do a good job at all. That's why the county is separating from them. So I think one of the things we need to kind of demand from our county and state elected officials is fiscal responsibility. And we had $25 billion in state's funding that was used, and now they cannot track it down. So that's a huge amount of money for any of our small municipalities to use and make a difference. Also, the local measures that passes, like Measure H, Glendale pays about $10 million a year in Measure H, and we get very small portion back, maybe $300,000 to $500,000 back on a yearly basis. And next measure that comes up, and I'm sure they're going to try to have more measures passed. We need to get more share of those measures to come back to Glendale and every other municipality, so we won't be short in money every year. And as far as our programs go, the first item that you have here, what is council's primary objective? Is it the goal to prevent eviction? If you're able to prevent eviction, then you don't have to pay for relocation fee. There won't be any relocation fee needed. So I think that's very important. And seniors, especially if they are a couple and then one of them passes away, they lose one income, and it's very difficult to live on one Social Security. And also seniors with disabilities, that's even more difficult. So I think our focus should be on that. Start from there, from seniors, and then work our way down depending on the funding that we have. But again, our state legislatures, we have to, when we go lobbying, we have to start lobbying on these items as well, because this is taxpayers' money. We paid for it, and they cannot track down $25 billion as to what happened to it. That's really disappointing. And I agree with most of the comments that my colleagues made, and it's all depending on how much funding do we get and how much funding can we save from our budget to allocate for these programs.
Thank you. Mr. Brotman?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the report. It's very thorough. One of the things I asked you in the briefing was about how many households well, let's say we took seniors over 72 years old, low income, very low income, and extremely low income. What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Well, let's see. So if you, and this slide is not in your packet, this is just a backup slide that staff had, but if you were to look at the percentages we had talked about, that first category, 65 and over,
Right.
23% of the total Glendale households, renter households, that would be 10,580 households, of which 76% of them are rent burdened. So that'd be 8,041 households. So if you use just that, because that's the smallest number of the three categories, and just assume that you give them $300 for 1 month, that's a $2.4 million subsidy only for 1 month. So you would never be able to address all of a category in any way.
Yeah, thank you. And I was running some numbers. I mean, we all know this problem is massive, right? And I think Councilmember Kasakian said something about, bailing water off the Titanic. That's what we're facing. If you were to do that 300 per month for, just seniors that are over 72, that are low income or very low or extremely low, I think we're talking something about $25 million a year is, give or take. So I don't think there's any universe where any city in LA can subsidize its way out of this problem, which is why I think our primary responsibility is long-term, which is, building housing, right? Getting more housing, so we deal with the supply issue. In the meantime, I think our focus has to be on preventing people from getting evicted, because evictions, we know, are very disruptive to people, not only financially, but emotionally, affect people's ability to hold down a job and so many other things. So I think programs that help people avoid getting evicted, I think, should be our top priority. I still believe we should consider stronger policies against rent evictions. We should look closely at what South Pasadena has done and see how that's progressing. I believe LA has also put in some moratorium on rent evictions. I don't know how that is actually working, but I still believe that we need to find ways for landlords to do the renovations they need without evicting those tenants. Perhaps temporarily moving them out, finding other places for them and bringing them back. I think that's something I still would like to see us do. And I would still like to see us, for the rent eviction relocation, to cover buildings with 3 and 4 units. So I'd still like to see that. I know that Burbank has a rental rights enforcement division. I don't know much about it, but I would like to learn more. I'd like staff to look into that and tell us how that works, because I think part of what we need to do is be able to do a better job of enforcing our own policies. As far as trying to do something to ease the burden among, the vast majority of people, one thing we could look at, if we are going to try to do something like that, is to work through the GWP program, because the GWP utility subsidy, and I don't know if you've been able to find out what income category that covers. Have you?
Yes. So GWP has 4 programs that they offer for low-income users. The one that appears to be most applicable, because some are very defined, would be the Glendale Care Program. That's a $35 monthly discount for low-income customers. And they use a different income threshold than we do for our programs. It's actually slightly lower than our program requirements.
Okay. I mean, the one thing about piggybacking on that is there would be no additional administrative costs. They're already doing that. So if we wanted to try to do something that was, shallow and broad-based, we could consider topping up that utility assistance, because look, a dollar is a dollar. So if we're helping people manage their utility costs, at least we're doing something for people. And if we can bring that $35 up, I know that GWP has a limited pot to be able to do that kind of thing. It's the public benefit charge. But I was thinking of a concept where we could actually pull some money, maybe additional dollars through the transfer out of GWP and turn around and return that to be able to enhance the utility subsidy program. That way we would be protecting the general fund to the extent that GWP could handle that without rate impacts. I know we're talking about rates later this evening, but something I'd like us to look into, is there a way that we can enhance that without blowing out the entire public benefit charge budget? I think that's what I have to say. Yeah. Okay, that's all. I think I covered all my comments.
If I could just add one more from my end. On the one with the Vertigo Job Center, was that temporary assistance? Or was it?
It was a one-year program.
So 1 year. I think one of the things that we can look at is the potential 2.4 million that's coming in, given that that's 6 months. Looking at how that helps subsidize the other program, because getting people back up on their feet and being able to, whether it's getting a raise or getting a new job, that helps them be more financially stable, should be one of our end goals. So as you're looking at the different programs, looking at how we're tying those together.
Whether or not any of the $2.4 million could be used for a life rep program that might be able to accomplish something in the 6 months.
Yeah, so
timeframe?
if you take some of that, or you allocate the 2.4, or half of that to cover the Vertigo Job Center program.
Okay.
Oh, could I, something? Are you done?
Sure.
Oh, okay, because, yeah, you reminded me of something, and I was going to mention that also, that Life Wrap program. I think that's been one program we feel is highly successful. I like all the way it has, these wraparound services, right? We're doing job training, we're getting people really prepared so that they can stand on their own 2 feet. So I do like that, and I hope we can find a way to continue that. I don't know about using that 2.4 million. I mean, that's already just a small amount of money. Looking at some other funding, looking at the general fund, and maybe, I know, we're in this kind of strange budget time, but maybe we can find things to cut to free up some more money to be able to continue Life Wrap. So I'm in support of that.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Zabak, I recognize our comments are all over the place. Do you?
Yeah, I
Is it
think,
helpful?
I
Do you
think there's
have-
enough to be able to move forward with, to be able to come back to you with some frameworks. It may not be exactly what you had wanted, but I think there's enough for us to certainly go back, get additional information, and come up with some proposals for you.
Okay.
Housing Chair, as far as the timing concerned, I don't believe staff will be able to bring this back before budget adoption this year. So we will have to consider that in the coming months.
What are the actual end dates of these programs? Do you have them? When do they lapse?
I don't have the exact end dates, but they're probably approaching this summer.
Okay. I think it would be helpful as we're going through the budget session to start having these conversations, Mr. Galanian, as part of that. And then if you can please get us the dates that these programs are going to end. All right.
I'll just say that I'll look into Life Wrap and Life Wrap. The MHSP program has
It's
finished.
done.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Another thing about
Yes.
budget, if I might, I know these programs can't come back, in with any kind of detail before the budget adoption, but we can talk about carving out some money, right, in our budget process, and I think we should do that. So we should have some money set aside, earmarked for these programs, and I think it's going to have to go beyond the 2.4 million Measure A money. That's just not going to cut it.
Well, those are kind of my comments, saying that this needs to be part of the budget conversation. And I've been saying this time and again, but really identifying, and hopefully tomorrow morning, that conversation kind of will lead us there. But the nice-to-have projects that we have that we really need to take a look at. All right. Do we need a motion?
Just note and file and provide direction pursuant to the comments of the council members.
Yeah, I'll move to note and file and accept the direction provided by council and the Housing Authority.
I'll second.
All right.
And does it have to be done separately for housing and
It
council?
was a council motion, since it's it would have to be a council-funded program.
Okay.
All right, roll call?
Councilmember Al Sadrian?
Yes.
Brotman?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Kasakian?
Yes.
And Mayor Najarian. Next is adjournment
Move to adjourn.
Second.
for housing.
Move to adjourn for housing?
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. We're rolling over into special.